I think it's safe to say that Metal Gear Solid is a pretty influential series of games. All the games, except 5 of course, have a great story, good characters, good world building, and overall, pretty good gameplay. So to fast forward and actually get to the point, Metal Gear Solid after 2008's MGS4 was ready to expand. In 2010, you would have the announcement of a new Metal Gear. I don't want to go into the history of that Metal Gear, because it would make this video way too long. But you should definitely check out Matt McMuscle's video on this series, so yeah. It's just gonna be me going straight into my own personal experience with playing it at first, and playing it again and again over the years. Also, this game is 10 years old somehow. I remember being almost 8 when my brother just watched me fail over and over again. Jesus, I was such an incompetent little kid. Anyways, cue awkward transition. First off, the visuals in this game are really good. They aren't colorful or anything like that, but I like the animation and rendering, especially during cutscenes and QTEs, because Jesus Christ, these sequences are so crisp. Like, of course they look completely ridiculous when you realize the physics-defying shit being done in these moments, but I just do not care. These scenes are so cool. The best part about the visuals is that the game runs at 60 FPS on console. If you play it on the vanilla Xbox 360 or PS3 version, there are fluctuations in frame rate, but if you play it through back compat on Xbox One or Series S, or you play the PC version, then you'll get like 1 frame dip probably, but that's not even really all that noticeable. Even then, the fact that a game like this ran at 60 FPS on consoles was truly a shock, since even hack and slash games during this time ran either at unlocked frame rates that went between 30 and 40 FPS, or in some cases, just 30, or in others, sub 30. On 7th gen consoles, this game definitely does go between like 33 and 60 FPS, but if you play it on the PC version or the Xbox One backwards compatible one, well, it doesn't really drop all that much, if at all. I also really like the designs of the characters, specifically the boss designs. I think the one I liked most is Armstrong. He's jacked as shit, but not overly designed or excessively detailed. I feel like it's the opposite of the main character, Raiden, who in my opinion is a bit too visually noisy after he gets his initial suit destroyed, but he still has a pretty decent design. Anyways, enough talking about the visuals, let's actually get to the story, you know, the thing that everyone seems to meme on nowadays. It's not at all very complicated, especially compared to other Metal Gear games of the past, but it is a pretty openly political game from what I've noticed. But it's not like trying to push a specific belief to a specific community, while bringing one community up and taking another down a peg, but it does raise some questions about moral and legal ambiguity. It doesn't paint Raiden as a good guy and everyone else as bad. The game allows everyone to show their true colors, and how Raiden isn't exactly fully good or as moral as he claims. I do not at all want to spoil this game, because I'm not a dick first off, and also, it's fun yet philosophical at the same time. The real thing I really want to talk about here is the gameplay. We will talk about this in parts, as there's plenty to actually discuss, both positive and negative, about this game. I'll just do this in somewhat coherent, non-transitional segments, where we'll talk about the good parts of the combat, and then the worst parts of it at the same time, and finally, the bosses and music. The music is completely important to these fights, so we'll get there when we'll get there, I guess. The combat for this game is pretty great for a first try. I really think that for being the first attempt at a hack and slash for Metal Gear, they really hit a home run with this one. The general hitting of buttons is fine, but what I find really satisfying is that Zendatsu cutting mechanic minigame. At first it seems awkward to use, but as you progress, it becomes pretty satisfying. I wish there was a sequel to actually flesh out these elements, because honestly, there's a really good idea here, and it does feel cool to do. The best part of combat is hitting enemies, then having the game slow down to encourage you to do a Zendatsu cutting minigame, and it actually does rely on accuracy. If you mash too hard, you won't actually get the electrolytes you need for healing. Jesus Christ, this mechanic is so fucking morbid. This game also has a parry mechanic that's pretty good. At first I thought that the parry was way too specific and overly based on precision, but as the game went on, I was parrying pretty well. I like that if you flick the stick too early, it'll end up just blocking with very slight pushback, but if you do it at the right time while pressing the attack button, it opens the enemy up. I usually prefer something like the new God of War games with their parrying, but this game does parrying pretty damn well. Also, this game is better than certain other games with parrying mechanics. My biggest issue with combat is that when fighting normal enemies, you can switch weapons, but unlike other games where you can switch on the fly, you can't switch on the fly here. So what you do is you have to stop attacking, mash the D-pad, then go into a pause menu, and then select your next weapon. Apparently this was done to, quote, preserve the Metal Gear inventory system, but it really does break the flow of combat, just to, like, stop and switch weapons that aren't even that combat effective. You get the weapons of bosses, which is pretty cool, but there's honestly only one that's actually effective for combat, and that's Mistral's little staff thing. But that's only because it uses the same combos as the sword. I like the combat in this game, but what drags it down are just a few small missteps, and it sucks that it didn't get a sequel to actually flesh anything out. Anyways, dumb criticism out of the way, we're going to talk about the actual best parts of the gameplay. Holy shit, these bosses are absolutely amazing. I will remove every single bit of my formality and scripting for my speaking because Jesus Christ, these fights are some of the most hype-ass fights in any game ever, even 2 generations later. I feel like the combat works best with these fights because it doesn't encourage you to just stop and switch as much as those other times. The first fight is simple and allows you to understand that while bosses can be similar, they will be pretty much upping the ante kinda significantly. The quick time events in these fights are also really well integrated because they're sparse enough to not feel like they ruin the whole game flow, but also prevalent enough to make them feel like they actually exist. I think my favorite fights were Mistral, Jetstream Sam, Monsoon, and especially the final boss with Senator Armstrong. They're difficult but not overbearing, so it actually feels like it's your fault when you lose. They integrate the Zendatsu cutting mechanic well, without being annoying, and they have genuine hype as hell moments. In Mistral's fight, you're going from the top of the refinery plant, then fighting on the pipes, and finally going back on the ground, where the chorus of that song kicks in. In Jetstream Sam's fight, you basically have the whole song playing, but the timing can be just right if you want it to, and it's so fucking satisfying. In Armstrong's fight, you're avoiding his pseudo AoE attacks, then cutting rubble that he chucks at you, while also trying to avoid his attacks that hit harder than 5 trucks going at 70 miles per hour. Jesus, for a game so short, they included a lot of good boss fights. Those QTEs are pure bliss, and they literally did not have to be, but damn it, they actually know how to integrate them. And it's not a replacement for gameplay, unlike some other games, but man, it's so amazing. These fights are so godly in this game, and that's not to mention its absolutely amazing soundtrack. The vocals are so powerful and energetic and frantic, and without feeling like noise either. And like I said earlier, syncing the music perfectly, especially for this game, is a borderline talent. You know, you look at something like Sonic Frontiers, where in spite of the fact that the Titan fights are fairly hype, timing the music to the sequence is contingent on waiting instead of timing attack properly or learning your way around things like a normal person. Oh my god, I can't fucking escape this game. Son of a bitch! The bosses are so great because they're challenging, exciting, and even have narrative relevance. They really did not need to go this hard, but Jesus Christ it does. Platinum games, mostly, go hard when they never even need to. I feel like this game deserves so much better. If there was a sequel, like it was seemingly planned, the mechanics would be so much more refined. I wish this game had a sequel because they could have improved that inventory system. Unfortunately though, Kojima left Konami because Konami was being stingy. You know, the usual. The thing is, Konami and Platinum Games could technically team up again and make Metal Gear Rising 2. The problem is that Kojima was such a big part of Metal Gear Rising 1 to exist, and Konami already tried another Metal Gear game 5 years afterwards, and made one of the worst games of 2018. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. They're on their own, and even with the help of Platinum, they would definitely struggle. Platinum isn't perfect, obviously. Last year, Babylon's Fall was janky and borderline unplayable, and Bayonetta 3 was a massive disappointment. So the only way for Rising 2 to exist is whatever reason Kojima just rejoins Konami. That's definitely not going to happen anytime soon though. Even though we don't have a sequel and we never will, most likely, well, we still have this step in the right direction. Oh yeah, one more note. Can we fucking stop with these goddamn